Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome wherever you're joining us from the world today. My name is Ernest Shea, and I'll be serving as the moderator for today's webinar, which is being brought to you by the Global Alliance for Climate Smart Agriculture in partnership with Fertilizer Canada, the Cooperative Development Foundation of Canada, Plant Nutrition Canada, Cornell University, and Solutions from the Land. I have the great pleasure and honor of serving as the co-chair of GACSA's Knowledge Sharing Action Group, along with my partner, Allison Chatrchyan from Cornell. And we're going to be tag teaming today, helping to introduce the topic that we'll be talking about, which is the 4R Nutrient Stewardship Program in Africa and how it is doing a tremendous job of improving livelihoods and financial well-being of farmers of all scales in Africa. So before we jump in to the program, a few housekeeping rules. We invite you to jot down questions and introduce them into the chat box or the Q&A. I guess we can find them in either place. We ask that as your questions come in, that you anticipate we'll have a 30-minute Q&A period on the back end of the webinar. So rather than stopping and responding to questions in the middle of presentations, we're going to wait and do that in the last 30 minutes. For those of you who pose questions and we may not have time to get to, not to worry, we will get back to you in writing following the webinar. And one other reminder, the webinar is being recorded. So for those that have registered but were not able to join right now, we'll certainly be able to share this across GACSA's network around the world, along with our affiliated cooperative partners. So in terms of our run of show today, we're going to begin with a quick introduction to GACSA, and then we're going to get into our technical subject matters, which will include a presentation by Clyde Graham, the Executive Vice President of Fertilizer Canada. We're then going to go to Christina Yakubu, who is the country manager for the Cooperative Development Foundation of Canada. And then we'll move along to Dan Henley with Plant Nutrition Canada. And each of those presenters is going to take about 10 to 12 minutes. So that may give you a feel for how we're going to be using our 90-minute block of time together. So it'll be approximately 1 hour of presentations of knowledge sharing, which is what GACSA is all about, followed by what may be the most important part, which are conversations with you, our partners, our GACSA members around the world. So enough with housekeeping. I'm going to turn it over to Allison, who's going to visit with us a little bit about the new and improved GACSA, the Global Alliance for Climate Smart Agriculture. Allison, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Ernie. It's great to be here today with you. And Yana, can you share? Okay. Yana is going to be sharing our slides today for us. So if you're not familiar with the Global Alliance for Climate Smart Agriculture, I just want to spend a few minutes letting you know what it is. And Ernie and I are co-leaders of the Knowledge Action Group. So the Global Alliance for Climate Smart Agriculture was actually launched in 2014, and it uses an integrated knowledge intensive approach to catalyze collaboration through its members' initiatives. So nothing that we do at GACSA, everything that we do at GACSA, I should say, is really through our members. And so Ernie took the leadership to organize this event today from his organization, the North American Climate Smart Agriculture Alliance, in collaboration with my organization, Cornell University, which has been a member of GACSA for many years. We're a multi-stakeholder platform with an extensive membership. It's been growing in the last few years, and it includes NGOs, farmer organizations, private sector organizations, research bodies, civil society, and others. So next slide. So we have 8 years of experience now working on really 3 areas: knowledge, developing partnerships, and working through our action groups. GACSA has a strong partnership with the UN FAO, or Food and Agriculture Organization, and we also help to support the Sustainable Development Goals and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change to ensure synergies between achieving all these goals. So I just want to point out that this is not an organization that's in one region of the world. We are a global alliance. We have 6 regional alliances, including the one that Ernie leads, the North American Climate Smart Agriculture Alliance. If you're unsure about which regional alliance, if there's a regional alliance that works with your country, please get in touch with Gianna, and she can let you know which organization that is. We've organized more than 130 dialogues. We have members from 6 different constituencies, as I mentioned: research organizations, businesses, NGOs, and we have 3 action groups. So the Knowledge Sharing Action Group is chaired by Ernie and I, and this is kicking off our new year and new work to work towards our new strategic plan for GACSA. We've done a lot of work over the years. We drafted Climate Smart Agriculture Youth Curriculum. We worked on case studies on agroecology and climate smart agriculture. We conducted a member survey. We've held many webinars like this. And what we're planning to focus on, what the needs are, is to ensure access to knowledge about climate smart agriculture, to strengthen regional data sharing, to work through enhanced social media, develop climate smart agriculture and weather decision tools in many regions of the world, broaden our knowledge base and engagement in climate smart agriculture throughout the food chain. So starting with farmers and then working with service providers and businesses all the way up from the local level to the global level. We also really want to focus on gender, involving women in all of these decisions, and increasing youth engagement. So last slide, I think. This is our strategic plan. Many of you may have been involved in developing it. It extends from 2022 to 2032. We're really going to focus on 3 areas, including sustainable agriculture, resilience and climate change adaptation, and innovation and technology. So I'll go to the last slide. We can share these slides with you. We can share the strategic plan with the members. Ernie and I just want to make a plug that this is the first of what can be many knowledge sharing activities this year. If you have an idea for a similar webinar or a need for information, please let us know, and we would love to work with you on that. So I'll turn it back to Ernie.
Okay, Allison, thank you very much. And thank you for serving as co-chair of this knowledge sharing group. And that is probably, I guess I'm a little biased because I'm the co-chairing it with Allison, but we think it's one of the most important action groups within the GACSA because it's a platform for learning, for sharing, and that's what we attempt to do. Okay, we're now going to move on to our technical presentation on how these financial tools and measures being implemented through the 4R solution program in Africa is improving lives. And we're going to have our kickoff speaker, Clyde Graham of Fertilizer Canada, give us an overview. So Clyde and Fertilizer Canada are foundational members of GACSA as well. So Clyde, I know we've worked together for many years, and it's great to see Fertilizer Canada stepping up and leading. So welcome, over to you.
Well, thanks very much, Ernie. Before we get into my presentation, I just want to acknowledge the unfolding tragedy in the Ukraine. It's a terrible thing that's happening there, and we hope for a quick and peaceful resolution of that if it's possible. But it's important today to acknowledge that because of the significant disruption that conflict has had on global agriculture and in particular fertilizer supply and disruptions in the marketplace. I think it is more important than ever to find ways to use fertilizer as efficiently as possible to ensure that farmers get the maximum value out of every kilogram of fertilizer they use. But also to protect the environment against losses of nutrients to the air and water. I'd also like to acknowledge that I know that there's many people in GACSA who have engaged in a wide range of options for farmers, such as regenerative agriculture and agroecology. And the 4R nutrient stewardship program that we work with is another tool in the toolbox for farmers who I think need to have choices. I don't know, Janet, do you have the slides there? So what we're talking about today is our 4R solution project. If you could go to the next slide. So the target of this program is to assist 80,000 smallholder farmers, 50% of them women, so that's 40,000 women who are engaged in agriculture, and focused on the countries of Ghana, Ethiopia, and Senegal. These figures are in Canadian dollars, but the project is a total of just under $17 million. It is a public-private partnership, so the fertilizer industry has contributed about $2 million in funding to the project. We got underway in 2019, and the project will extend into 2024. So we're really at more or less the halfway mark. We've just as of tomorrow, we will have completed 3 years of work on the project. And it's really, well, we'll just go to the next slide. So the project priorities are listed on the left-hand side. I believe there are really sort of 3 pillars to the program. The first is the 4R Nutrient Stewardship Program, which uses promotes the use of the right source of fertilizer at the right rate, the right time, and the right place to maximize environmental and economic outcomes for farmers. And a lot of the work that we're doing in the countries is extension, which is training and advice for the workers who help farmers and the farmers themselves. Now, obviously, the 80,000 is a lot of people. And so the way we've been trying to reach people in large numbers is to work with through farmer-owned co-ops and to build the capacity of those co-ops to help farmers source fertilizer and other crop inputs, and also to be more effective in marketing those crops so that farmers have the increased profitability from their farming operations to provide for better diets, for education, healthcare, and to build the economies of the countries. And I think the third pillar is really the focus on women, and there is significant training in the program to assist women to improve their outcomes, to become leaders in their communities and in cooperatives. Next slide, please. So, yeah. So Christiana is going to provide some more detail, but we certainly are working in, our project has been going on for 3 years in both Ghana and Ethiopia. We're just pivoting to start the final stage, which is to build a program in Ghana. And we're working with, crops such as in Ghana, maize, rice, groundnut, soybeans; in Senegal, maize, rice, and groundnut; and in Ethiopia, wheat teff, which is the foundation for the key bread that's used in Ethiopia; chickpeas and lentils. Next slide, please. And here's some of the results that we've had so far that are on the screen. I think one of the key things that I think is of value in the program is that we've established national advisory committees in both Ghana and Ethiopia, and that's drawn from government, farm groups, science community, agribusiness, and they're making recommendations in both Ghana and Ethiopia to improve the environment for using 4Rs and cooperatives and other aspects of the 4R solution in those countries, but it's really a locally led, policy-driven effort. Next slide, please. And these are the areas that the national advisory committees are working on: sort of awareness of the 4Rs, accessing the right type of fertilizer for the local conditions, trying to get unified voice on some of these issues, to deal with some of the negative perceptions of fertilizer use, and also to look for ways to find more resources for smallholder farmers to adopt 4R practices. And the next slide, please. And Dan will probably talk more about this, but here's just the key principles of using the right source of fertilizer, but also manure or compost or other nutrient sources if they're available, applying it at just the right rate for the needs of the crop and the soil conditions at the right time, and in the right place in the soil and in the field too, so that we're not losing fertilizer unnecessarily. The next slide. And then these are just some of the yield increases that we're seeing in country for various crops. On the right-hand side, you can see the percentage increase in yield by using the 4R practices, and you can see that particularly in Ghana, where there's been a lower use of fertilizer than Ethiopia, some of the results are amazing. And so this just sort of, I think, summarizes us that, as the majority of smallholder and farmers in Ethiopia and Ghana rely on agriculture, and this is the same in developing countries around the world. Farmers are not just growing crops to feed themselves, but they're also growing crops to build income and wealth, and so that they can do better for their families and increase the wealth of the entire country. And I think that's, in essence, it's really meant to try and be transformative for those countries. And the next slide. And I just wanted to thank all the people that we're working with on this project. Of course, Global Affairs Canada is the key funder. but these are the companies and of course Cooperative Development Foundation that are actually putting private sector funding into the project, which I think is very valued in Africa as Africa seeks to find more private sector investment. And then our partners at the top who are actually doing a lot of the on the ground work, including the African Plant Nutrition Institute. So that's all I have, Yana. Thanks very much for everyone's attention.
Okay, Clyde, thank you very much for introducing us to the 4R program and those remarkable early results. I think it's a wonderful example of a GACSA multi-stakeholder partnership at work. And boy, the work that we're about, trying to sustainably intensify production, improve resilience in the face of changing climatic conditions, and also mitigate those challenges that we're facing, happens in a lot of ways. And this is one pathway towards those outcomes and improvements. I wear a number of hats, one of which is serve as the president of a farmer-led organization called Solutions from the Land. And last year, we released a 21st Century Renaissance report that outlines pathways through which agriculture can be enabled to deliver solutions to multiple sustainable development goals. And as we put our report together, we scanned the world and looked for innovative examples of creative multi-stakeholder partnerships that were delivering on these goals. And the 4R program jumped to the top. So we included that in the report that we wrote. There's a case study embedded within the 21st Century Renaissance report, and I'll drop a link in the chat box to that. But we were so impressed with it, we also produced a video, and we don't have time to show the entire video today, but we're going to show the 2-minute teaser that you can access online and learn even more about this program. So Jana, could you play our video, please?
We, the farmers in Chamba here, were wondering why we are not getting high and quality yield. And then this project came. Because formerly we were farming anyhow without any principles. So 4R project came and then start with some demo farms to train us how to farm and get quality and more yield. So they make demo farms. They say the right way to get your fertilizer, and even the right way to start your farming, even the right land which you have to farm, and then the right soil to get your fertilizer, right rate, and the right time and the right place. So when we started, we learned that from the field, the demo fields. And this year, if I apply it to my farm, I think I will get more and quality yield.
Before I learned about 4R, I didn't know there were specific herbicides for specific weeds and specific fertilizers for specific crops. But now, 4R has taught us to get the right source of fertilizer, the right time, the right rate, and the right place to apply the fertilizer. This year, I'll take my time to do the right thing. I will consult with the agriculture extension agents to support me so I can get better yields, sell it, and make enough money to take care of my children.
My hope and expectation in these 4R principles is I'm expecting that my life to change, because if I apply the right principles, I will get more yield and sell. And if I sell, I will have money to help my family.
Great. Well, thank you for showing that, Jana. And I hope it draws your attention deeper into the 4R Solution Project. And in the chat box, you can find a link to the full case study in the video. Okay, so we've had our introduction to the program. Now let's actually dive deeper and hear from Christina Yakbudu, who has been working in country in Africa on the 4R Nutrient Stewardship Program. And again, Christina, welcome. Christina is with the Cooperative Development Foundation of Canada, and over to you.
So good afternoon and good morning to everyone. I'm very pleased to be part of this webinar and especially to speak on the access to finance of farmers and how that can enhance good practices among farmers. So I have some slides, Allison, Jane, then you can project my slide. Yeah, so if you look at the video that just ended, you will realize that the farmers have learned and they have to now adapt. So the slides, yeah. Okay. So go ahead. Go ahead. Since Clyde has already made some presentations on the excerpts of the project, I will not spend time on that any longer. I will just concentrate on the financing needs and the kind of interventions that as a project we have made, and then the results that we have achieved. So you can go ahead. That's that slide. Jenna, go ahead. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead. So just stay there. So all the out. Go back to the other slide, please. Please go back to the other slide. Okay. So with all the interventions, no, the next one. So with all the interventions that we are embarking under this project, we want farmers to increase their productivity. We also want them to increase access to the markets, both input and output markets. And also we want to improve gender equality and access to finance by these smallholder farmers play a very critical role in achieving all these outcomes. Go ahead. Go ahead. Next slide. So if you may ask, how does this happen? No, go back. Sorry. Yes, so the smallholder farmer, or you be able to adapt these practices, increase their productivity, be able to engage much better with the value chain actors. Access to finance is very critical in which area? Land preparation. The farmer needs to be able to, needs finance to be able to plow their land at the right time. They also need finance to be able, the knowledge that they have learned, they need to apply this knowledge to be able to increase their production. So if you come to the issue of seed, they need money to be able to buy the right type of seed that can get them the right amount of produce, especially when it comes to disease-resistant seed, it comes to drought-resistant seed, improved seed. They need money to be able to make the right choices, to be able to get the right produce. When it also comes to fertilizer application, if they will be able to utilize the 4R or adapt the 4R practices, they need money at the right time to be able to acquire fertilizers. If I put it into context, Clyde made reference to the disruptions that are happening. So farmers need money to be able to acquire these fertilizers at the right time so that they will be able to apply the fertilizer at the right time, get the right type of fertilizers, and also in the right quantities. All this is about money. The farmers also need money to be able to procure agrochemicals, to deal with weed at the right time, and also deal with insect infestation and pest infestation at the right time. That's at the land preparation and then planting stage. When you look at this picture, you realize that most of those who are on the farm are women. It tells you that women do a lot on the farm when it comes to planting, when it comes to fertilizer application, when it comes to harvest and even cutting the harvest home. It is the women that are much involved at this stage. So we need technology. They need money to buy technology so that we will not only make the smallholder farmer more efficient, but we will also help in reducing the burden of the women so that they can save time to engage in other productive activities that can bring income to them. The other aspect that the farmers need financing is alternative livelihood activities, especially in Ghana and in the north. We have one season. So at the end of the season, especially for women, they get engaged in issues, activities of aggregation. They also get engaged in petty trading. So at that point in time, they need money. Otherwise, they are going to sell their produce at cheaper cost. The cooperatives will not be able to mop up the numbers because if farmers are selling in bits because they need ready cash, then the cooperatives will not be able to act the way we are expecting them to act as a group. So they need financing to trade at the time that the production season is over, so that they can be able to smoothen consumption and also get additional income from other sources. Okay, so move on. Yes. So what are the interventions that as a project we have put in place across all the countries? One major intervention is that we have introduced the community savings and lending model. In Ethiopia, we call it SACCOs. In Ghana, they call it VSLs, where the farmers are able to mobilize their own resources, lend to each other to address these financing needs that I mentioned in the previous slide. As a project, we also have a loan fund. This loan fund has been given to financial cooperatives, and these cooperatives are lending to members. So they kind of augment the internally generated funds that the farmers mobilize by themselves. The third intervention we have as a project is that we have a technology fund. And this technology fund is targeted at supporting the farmers to acquire technologies that can really make them efficient and also improve upon product quality. So if you look at the picture on top, you see that this is one of the technologies that the farmers acquired, which has really reduced the burden of cutting farm inputs to the farm and cutting farm produce home. Some acquired tarpaulins, which ensures product quality, planters. All this is are technologies that enhances productivity and also lessens the burden of women and makes women more productive and interactive. Next slide. Next slide. So we have made a number of progress based on these interventions. At least a good number of our farmers have been able to access credit for various activities, especially for women. We have most of the women who are now at least over 40% of the women, because they are involved in the internal lending and savings model, they have become more empowered that at least 40% of the leadership of the credit unions are women. And in Ghana in particular, we have district assembly level elections. We have 200 of them who have come out and they want to contest for those elections at the district level, which for us is very exciting. But more importantly, the adoption of using fertilizers and also using improved seed has also increased. And they are even already mobilizing to get seeds and fertilizers for the next season. The adoption of technology is also critical for us. And we can see that now, at least those who had the opportunity to buy the technologies because of the fund are now using those technologies, making additional income, but also being more productive on their farms. Next slide. So moving forward into year 4, as Clyde mentioned, we have just finished our year. We are finishing our year 3. We want to strengthen the capacity of the SACCOs and the credit union to do more of innovative financing so that the cooperative can benefit more in the internal lending fund and also the fund that the project has given to them. Rural commercial women are groups that are into alternative livelihood activities. We want them to move to another level where they are able to add more value to especially for those who are processing, so they can add more value. Then when they take the credit, they are able to utilize it and make more income for themselves. With the cooperatives, we are going to intensify the capacity building, especially in the area of governance, so that they will be able to manage the fund that is at their level to a sustainable end. So basically, that is what we have as a project. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, Christiana, thank you so much for that excellent overview. And it was a nice way to really demonstrate the multiple dimensions of how this initiative is addressing Sustainable Development Goal attainment. Obviously, there's a focus on productivity, but also improved livelihoods, which is at the heart of what we're about in GACSA. Okay, we're now going to shift and turn to another dimension of the 4R Solution Initiative, which is how more efficient use of inputs can actually be delivering climate change mitigation solutions. And joining us today is Dan Henney with the Plant Nutrition Canada, who's going to be talking about a new study that is, I believe, just out this week, Dan, that documents some of the greenhouse gas emission reduction benefits that can be delivered with efficient nutrient management. So Dan, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you. And if we could have the first slide, please, Anna. Give me a second here. I got to rearrange a few things on my screen. Oh, I'm not seeing the slides.
Are you seeing them now?
Oh, not yet.
Is anyone else seeing the slides?
No, we can't, Jen. I think we're looking at your, there we go. No, Dana's back.
Okay, just a second. What
There
about?
we go.
Yeah, there you go. Dan, if you click on the little Zoom icon and choose, there should be like multiple views of it.
Yeah, I think I'm fine now.
You see
So,
it?
Yep, I'm good. So thanks for the introduction. Just a little bit about who I am before we start. I'm a soil scientist. I live in Western Canada. I've been working on sustainable nutrient management with the 4R program for about 15 years. In North America, South America, Australia, in Eastern Europe, and now a little bit in Africa. And it truly is a universal program. It's based on, derives best management practices from scientific principles. We just saw from Christina how it's being applied in Africa. And, I thought that was quite interesting to see some of the work on the ground. This paper that we're releasing today, the discussion paper, I'd like to acknowledge my co-authors on that paper. And Guillaume, Karen, and I did the initial drafting, with Guillaume actually doing most of the heavy lifting. Samuel and Shea, who are with the African Plant Nutrition Institute, they provided guidance and did technical review, as well as Tom, who's with the chief scientist with Plant Nutrition Canada. And then Labonia and Clyde provided some initial guidance, some editing, the occasional jab in the ribs to get it over the finish line. And so I'd like to thank all those people who were involved. So if I could have the next slide. So what this, what this paper is about is, you've seen some information about the 4R Africa project and what it's doing on the ground, better use of fertilizer, The FAO has done some work in terms of predicting what fertilizer use will, it will go up over the years to come as Africa strives to meet its food security goals, feed a growing population. And with increased fertilizer use can come environmental problems that if it's not managed properly. So one of the things that we did in this, or what I wanted to do in this paper, was we wanted to look in particular at the climate change aspects and nitrogen fertilizer use, and how we could use 4R to mitigate the nitrous oxide emissions, or reduce the nitrous oxide emissions that come with fertilizer use. But before I go there, I did want to make a few comments then about 4R. It's a, 4R nutrient stewardship is a balanced approach. The aim of 4R is to improve environmental outcomes, optimize social benefits, and enhance economic performance. I do want to say that it's a part of an overall management of a sustainable cropping system. And 4R manages plant nutrients. So it is not a specific fertilizer management system, it's a nutrient management system. So it's quite compatible with managing nutrients from organic sources like manure, accounting for the nutrients that are available in the ground already. And then, managing the system with respect to the right source at the right rate, the right time, and the right place, as has been mentioned previously. So as I could go to the next slide then. So just before we get into, a bit more about the paper, today we're going to talk about the nitrous oxide and its impact on the environment is well known. It's a very powerful greenhouse gas, and but cropping systems leak nitrogen, and some of that leakage contributes to from fertilizer contributes to the nitrous oxide coming out. And so what we wanted to do was we wanted to take a look at how much mitigation we could potentially get by following the 4R program as nitrogen fertilizer use expands in Africa over the coming decades. So the goal of 4R when it comes to nitrogen is to manage the nitrogen cycle more effectively. The nitrogen cycle is a little leaky. If we manage it more effectively, not only do we reduce the losses to the air as nitrous oxide, but we also reduce the losses to groundwater and surface water with leaching and runoff. One of the things I wanted to remind people of, that the nitrogen cycle and the carbon cycle are intimately connected in cropping systems. So nitrogen is one of the main drivers of biomass production or yield in cropping system, and greater biomass draws more carbon dioxide out of the air. And then after the harvest is done, the residues that remain in the system are the building blocks of soil organic carbon. And so replenishing soil carbon is one of the key drivers in regenerative agriculture and soil health, because carbon drives the ecosystem in the soil. And so, what we've found at various places in the world, that judicious use of nitrogen fertilizer combined with things like, proper tillage regimes can, start to restore the soil carbon, build the soil organic matter in soil. And then that leads to a whole bunch of good things like better drought resistance, better water holding capacity, better soil tilth, which makes it easier for implements to move through the soil, and those sorts of good things that are all part of reestablishing the health of the soil and the and its productivity. So if I could have the next slide, please. So I just wanted to focus in for a minute and remind people that, where's this nitrous oxide coming from in the soil? And it's coming from two main processes, nitrification and denitrification. So as nitrogen comes into the soil as in the plant available form as the ammonium ion, the NH4+, it tends to start to convert to or oxidize through to nitrate and their NO3-. And that process or nitrification process is one of the sources of nitrous oxide emission from the soil. So as it moves through that process, it's a multi-step process. If one of the steps kind of gets slowed up and you start to get accumulation of nitrite, then you can start to get some leakage of nitrous oxide. You remember that crops take up either ammonium or nitrate, so that, both forms are available. And by managing nitrogen to slow down that process of nitrification, you can also then ensure that, the nitrous oxide emissions are reduced. And, I think we need to remember that this is what happens to fertilizer, but it also is what happens to nitrogen added as manure. It's also what happens to nitrogen that's coming out of the residue of, for example, pulse crops as well. So that process, all the nitrogen in the system as it's released into the ammonium pool, including the mineralization of organic matter, will then move through to nitrification, and you have that potential for loss. The other thing that leads to nitrous oxide emissions is the denitrification process. And well, nitrification is aerobic or needs oxygen. It's denitrification is anaerobic. It occurs when the soil's soaking wet. So nitrification and denitrification are the main sources of direct nitrous oxide emissions from the cropping system. And then any nitrogen that's lost from the system in terms of through leaching or runoff or volatilization, gassing off of ammonia from fertilizers like urea or application of manure, it wanders off. I say when it wanders off and gets in trouble elsewhere. So it leads to indirect nitrous oxide emissions. So just let's move to the next slide and talk a little bit about the paper. So what we did in this discussion paper, and truly a discussion paper, we'd hope it would generate some thinking, some projects, some feedback. But what we did is we were looking for a first approximation approach to get some numbers around what kind of impact for our nutrient stewardship could have on reducing those nitrous oxide emissions that are going to potentially come from increased nitrogen fertilizer use. So we use something called the 4R Climate Smart Protocol, or a derivative approach coming out of the 4R Climate Smart Protocol. And so the 4R Climate Smart Protocol is something first developed in Canada by the nitrous oxide emission reduction protocol for Alberta's regulated market. But it is gone global since then. 4R Climate Smart is globally scalable, and it has been endorsed by FAO as a climate smart agricultural practice. So, what we do with the Climate Smart Protocol is, and 4R is central to its application, is we develop best management practices for source rate, time, and place, and then through empirical research and professional judgment, we are able to tie some nitrous oxide emission reductions to the adoption of these practices compared to a baseline. And so we get this ability to develop these reduction coefficients, and then we can compare it to a business as usual baseline, and that gives us a first approximation of what kind of reductions we could expect by adapting certain practices or adopting certain practices. In this study, what we did was we used the FAO stat projected emissions of nitrous oxide that are tied to increased fertilizer use. We used that as both our starting point and then our business as usual baseline out to 2030 and 2050. And because we, for Sub-Saharan Africa, it's a huge place, lots of different climates, lots of different cropping systems. We don't have this, aren't at the point yet where we have the specific BMP, BMP that work in all those different, specifically in different cropping systems. But we do know from work that's been done elsewhere that, we would typically get in the range of, the range of reduction that we would get with 4R, depending on practices, would range from maybe 5% at the low end, and actually up to 45 or 50% at the high end. What we chose was a range of 5 to 25% reductions, and then we added to that sort of an increasing adoption rate. So we did this matrix approach to get at the a first cut of what might be possible in terms of emission reductions. So if we could move to the next slide. So just to give you a bit of a flavor of what it looked like, you can look at, hopefully read the paper and see what's going on. But there's the scenarios in terms of adoption. We went 10, 20, 30% up to 2030, and then 5, 10, 15, 25% emission reductions associated with those, and then started with 2050 at 30, 40, and 50. What we, sort of the best case scenario we explored would be this, bottom right-hand corner, where in terms of, kilotons of reduction per year, we could get to, about 3,500 over compared to, and at the top in red there is the baseline, the business as usual. So we knocked that down by 2050 to about 2,200 or 2,300. Now, this is based on current technology. We didn't make any assumptions about new technology or new approaches coming on. So we just based it on what's available out there now. So next slide, please. So I want to spend the last few minutes on a couple of key points that I think have been touched on by Christina already. But in the paper, we do provide this table that shows the general direction in source rate, time, place that would occur that would lead to higher, higher fertilizer use efficiencies and lower nitrous oxide emissions. And so you can see that, its source, it's, making sure, and Christina talked about this, and it was talked about in the video, making sure that you have appropriate sources, which can be an issue out in the country. And then, moving to, with time, potentially moving to higher, enhanced efficiency sources that could potentially reduce nitrous oxide and give higher, higher efficiency for nitrogen when it's applied. Moving to field-specific rates where, through various means, the farmer is looking at their, the different fields or different parts of their field and applying fertilizer appropriate for the yield potential across the field. And then, in terms of timing, and it was interesting to see in Christina, some of Christina's pictures was the some micro dosing going on, as it looked like a maize crop was at about the 5 to 6 leaf stage, and seeing that kind of adjusting the timing to match more closely with the uptake window, the maximum uptake window of the crop, and finally with placement, again, go back to watching the farmers put the fertilizer next to what looked to be the fertilizer next to the plant where it's easily accessible. So that's the kind of general progression that we see in terms of BMPs for source, rate, time, place that work both for increasing yield, nutrient, nitrogen use efficiency, and reducing emissions. And just by way of mention, then that these practices tend to be synergistic, so we tend to organize them in in tiers or basic, intermediate, and advanced, and encourage the introduction or the complementary nature of different practices. So we could go to the next slide, and I'm getting close to the end. So just a couple of things then, at the present time, Sub-Saharan Africa is in the mining phase in terms of their nutrient use efficiency and nitrogen use efficiency, where they're taking far more out of the system than's going in, either as as inputs, either as fertilizer, manure, or as biological nitrogen fixation. So typically, as countries develop their agriculture, the nitrogen use efficiency, yield goes up, a lot of more nitrogen, which is the main yield driving nutrient, is applied, but nitrogen use efficiency drops off because practices are fairly basic or even pre-basic in terms of 4R, sort of broadcasting without at the wrong time, and these sorts of issues. So then as we go forward and practices improve, the nitrogen use efficiency starts to bounce up again. And there is a theoretical limit to nitrogen use efficiency, but it can get up into the 70–75% range. And so if you look at that brown line on the which I've labeled 4R SSA, part of the challenge and part of the solution in Sub-Saharan Africa will be as fertilizer nitrogen increase is that we actually make that curve more shallow and avoid those low NUE practices and sort of transition through to the kind of sustainable intensification nitrogen use values. So the focus on nitrogen use efficiency, I think, is pretty important moving forward. So we can have the next slide. So, and I think one of the things that it's taken us quite a few years in the world at large to start to understand the relationship between nitrogen use efficiency and nitrous oxide emissions. And so, but I think in Africa there's a lack of direct emission data tied to nitrogen management practices, and direct measuring of N2O is it's expensive, it's time consuming, it's complicated. Nitrous oxide emissions are highly variable in time and space. But I think what has evolved over the last decade or so is that various measures of nitrogen use efficiency are a reasonably robust proxy for N2O emissions. And so, we can use the nitrogen use efficiency measures to allow progress on the agronomics and economics. And although, it's somewhat semi-quantitative or qualitative, when we're comparing practices in the field, we can use the nitrogen use efficiency as a proxy, and practices that improve nitrogen use efficiency are more than likely to also reduce nitrous oxide emissions. So, one of the things then is, developing these accessible tools to compare economic and environmental benefits of BMPs. And one of them is the end balance approach, which is a type of nitrogen use efficiency. And it was interesting in the some of the material we saw earlier, they were weighing the harvest. Well, if you know how much nitrogen fertilizer you put on, and you know how much crop you took off, and you can use, if you can't measure the nitrogen in the crop, you can use, standard values to calculate something like the end balance. And then by comparing different practices or in those demonstration farms, you can, start to figure out which ones have higher nitrogen use efficiency and consequently lower nitrous oxide emissions. Okay, on to the last slide. And just, recognizing the sponsors, and, I would suggest that if you have any questions on this discussion paper, I believe Livonia is going to circulate it to members of the audience right after the seminar is over, webinar is over, and you can direct questions to her that don't get answered, and or about the paper, and or there's my contact if you have specific things you want to send my way. So, and thank you.
Okay, Dan, thank you very much for sharing those very encouraging results of this, what I'm calling a groundbreaking report. So I noticed there were a number of requests for it. We've put links to the report in the chat box, so you'll be able to access it there, as well as we'll send it along following the webinar today. Okay, we are right about on time, and now is the fun part, the questions from you and the opportunity to have a conversation. And I would remind you to please drop your questions in the Q&A box or the chat. We'll find them in either place. And the first question I want to pose, I think I'll start to Clyde, to you. This is from Evans Larby, the CEO with Bait Farms in Ghana. And he notes that this is a young farmer cooperative. They've got 60,000 smallholder farmers. Wow, that's impressive. And 80% are women, but they're having challenges accessing fertilizer for their farming activities. And he has a question of, what can we do at this era? And you mentioned this at the onset, at the beginning of the webinar, but due to the conflict in Europe, how do you get access to fertilizers at the cooperative level? Could you maybe speak to that, and maybe a follow-up to Christina in country?
Sure. Well, it's a problem for farmers around the world right now to access fertilizer, but I would say that there is no quick solution to some of the persistent capacity, logistics, and other foundational problems in African agriculture that are going to have to be solved over time. But also, I think the world needs to make some significant investments in Africa to bring its agricultural capacity forward. I do think, though, that cooperatives can play an important part in increasing the market power of farmers in Africa, bringing smallholders together in large groups so that they can access inputs and market their crops, more effectively. I think is a solution, but I don't have any quick fixes for things that have resulted from, sort of years of lack of investment in Africa. And I think we all need to find ways to put more of our savings into African enterprises is one thing I would sort of say. But I'm wondering if somebody from CDF could speak more directly just about our procurement process for fertilizer and other inputs on the ground. Christiana, or?
Thank you very much, Clyde and Evans, for your concern. Yes, we also observe that. So because the truth is that there is limited supply of fertilizers this year. This was even there. So to find a way around it, we have already asked our farmers to mobilize their resources, and we are talking to the private sector actors so that they are able to get the fertilizers in bulk. So that's what we are doing, already mobilizing their resources to get the fertilizers. And we are working with the private sector. We can reach out to them that easily, but the local suppliers, they are those that we are contacting. And our relationship with IFAP is also helping. So IFAP is also talking to the importers so that they can work with those who are at the district level and at the suppliers so that they can easily get the fertilizer. Then the farmers can access it in bulk. Thank you very much.
You're muted, Ernie.
Apologies, forgot to unmute. Thank you, Christina. We have a question from one of our participants pointing out the relationship between nitrogen leaching and eutrophication. So Dan, that might be one to you. That's obviously one of the goals and objectives to reduce leaching, but could you comment a little bit about progress that we're making on addressing eutrophication challenges, not just in Sub-Saharan Africa, but in other water bodies?
Yeah, so, eutrophication is driven, depending on where you are in the world, eutrophication is driven by, nitrogen or phosphorus. And one of the key practices then that starts to reduce the movement with water off site, either through surface runoff or through leaching, is concentrating the fertilizer in the soil in bands or nests, and then the other part is the timing of it, so that it's the timing is closer, as I said, to that maximum uptake level, and so those are two key practices that help help reduce losses from the system into the water system. And so, with respect, from a chemical point of view or biological point of view, if fertilizer goes in, for example, in the ammonium form and it's concentrated, it converts more slowly to the nitrate form, and it's that nitrate form that's mobile in most soils and can be leached away. So, that's one of the things that for our focus is on is practices that prevent all forms of loss. And I would say those are, two of the key, key takeaways is, the placement and the timing of the fertilizer, as well as, appropriate rates, which, over fertilizing with nitrogen or phosphorus is not going to be a big scale or broad scale problem in Africa in the near future, like it is potentially in some areas like the American Midwest. So, I hope that kind of gives you at least a partial answer to your question. So.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Dr. Dinburu has a question, and he has observed that we are showing a increase in productivity in the range of 25% for wheat in Ethiopia. And I think that might have been in Christiana's presentation. But his question is this over the course of several growing seasons, or was this one particular crop year? Christina, could you clarify that?
I think that was in his presentation. So I don't know whether it's a cumulative effect but surely it will be last year's production. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I can provide some context on that.
So the figures, yeah.
Right. That I believe those results were for the 2020 production year. We have a fairly significant lag in the analysis of the field work, which is done by the African Plant Nutrition Institute. So just by way of background, we did not get approval for funding until unfortunately a bit late in 2019 to get started. So our first full year of demonstration plots were in 2020. So those results, which have been shared, the link to the summary of those results and the more detailed work is now been put into the chat and is on our website. But those results, I believe, are from 2020, and then we'll be getting the 2021 results this year as well. And then, so there is a bit of a lag, but that's due to the rigor and the professionalism of the African plant nutrition scientists who are working on making sure that our data is accurate and credible.
Okay, Clyde, thank you. The 4R approach to production is not a silver bullet. I think we all recognize that. And we have a question about how its use is being integrated with additional climate smart ag practices, such as reduced tillage, cover crops, more of a systems approach to improving productivity. Who would like to take a crack at that?
Yeah.
Did you want to start, Christiana?
Yeah, thank you very much. The 4R practices are complemented by other climate smart practices, especially with the climate variability. We are looking at practices that can conserve water, practices that can make them more resilient in case of any drought issues. So we have just mentioned about the challenges of getting fertilizers. We are also incorporating organic fertilizers to complement the inorganic fertilizers. So we are looking at, and also even in terms of seed, we are looking at drought resistant seed, especially for northern Ghana, where the rain season is becoming shorter and shorter. So we are looking at all those climate smart practices that can complement and make sure that we get the impact that we desire in applying the 4R principles in fertilizer application. Thank you very much.
I'd sort of add on to that, Ernie.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that I mean, there are no silver bullets. You very much need a systems approach. Nutrient management is part of the system. I mentioned when I was talking about the close relationship between nitrogen and the carbon cycle. So there are no silver bullets, and all of these tools need to be available to farmers so they can figure out what works best in their climate, their crops they grow, and the resources they have available to them. And the economics as well. So things like cover crops are part of the mix, but there's a time and cost element to cover crops that has to be compared to continuous cropping of cash crops. And so they need to, as I say, the more tools you have in the toolbox, and the more you can get farmer understanding about those tools and how they're applied, the more, the better and faster progress you're going to make. So, we've always talked about 4R as, part of a integrated solution to the, the problems of, food security, the problems of climate change, and raising the, the economic economic of the individual farmer while, reducing his environmental impact. So.
Okay, thank you, Dan. And David Miller has put a comment in the chat box reminding us that we also have to be concerned about post-harvest losses, which is a significant challenge in many parts of the world. So that's yet another example of why the GACSA platform, bringing multiple disciplines, multiple stakeholders together to do a better job of integrating solutions across the entire production chain. I have a question that maybe goes to Christina or any of the panel members, and it has to do with the concept of knowledge sharing. And when this program was designed, there was a strong recognition that we needed to have a very robust way to bring farmers together and share knowledge and information. And it's great to see this blooming and growing. But could any of you comment on the importance of a trusted messenger? The traditional way of knowledge sharing, an extension model, if you will, is where experts from someplace arrive and inform and teach people what to do. And obviously that's important, but equally important, or perhaps more important, is the farmer to farmer networking and knowledge sharing and learning. How is that evolving, and how productive and helpful has that dimension been? Christina, could you comment on that?
Yes, thank you very much. Under the project, as you mentioned, we are looking at how extension delivery is done at the community level, because it's obvious the extension agents that are employed by government are few. The farmer to extension ratio is very high. And because of that, as a project, we have local extension service delivery, where we have a community volunteer extension agents. So these community volunteer extension agents are working closely with the government extension agents who transfer the knowledge to them. Then the farmers have access to this knowledge as and when they need it, because these community volunteer extension agents are within the communities. So some of our demos we build around these community extension volunteers who are able to readily provide support to the farmers within the community. So in all our communities, we have 2 people. Another critical concern has been the fact that women less access the extension services from the government, because most of them are men, and sometimes they are not able to structure the time they deliver extension information to farmers. But with the women involved as community extension volunteers, they are able to do one-on-one farmer support at the community level. So that is one core model that this project is going to leave behind. And we see it a very sustainable model. And the Department of Agric is even working to enroll them into their system and well recognized and certificated. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thank you for elaborating on that, Christina. And that approach to learning is so foundational and so important. And I know here in the United States, as we try to become more sustainable, the tendency is always just to show up with the answer and tell people how to farm. And what we've come to appreciate is that's not the most efficient and effective way to affect transformational change. It's when farmer leaders experimenting, refining, informed by their academic and value chain partners, take risks and learn from them and grow, having an opportunity to share those experiences, their knowledge is very, very important. So I'm glad to see that that's a foundational aspect of the 4R program in Africa. We have a question about where do we go from here? And Clyde, this one goes to you. We're hearing great results here in Ethiopia and Ghana, but yet there's so much more work to be done. So what can be done to help further scale up the knowledge sharing and work around 4R, given the pilot experiences we've had here in Ethiopia and Ghana and soon to be Senegal? What can we done? What can GACSA do? What can FAO do? What can the value chain partners do?
Well, it's a big question. I mean, I think we, with our partners at Cooperative Development Foundation, African Plant Nutrition Institute, and our emerging partnerships with people like the African Fertilizer and Agribusiness Partnership, IFDC, a bunch of different groups. I think we're all exploring what lessons we are learning from the project. I think there are we're very encouraged by all the results, but I think we want to fully understand where we're making the most positive contributions possible, and then to see how we can attain more resources to take that forward. But I mean, already we're working with IFDC and other partners that are engaged in extension and a number of other African countries to share the training material and research that's been accumulated through this project. And so, I mean, I would sort of say that even without additional resources, the information that we're developing, the analysis that's being done by the national advisory committees, all this is publicly available on our website. We're happy to look at collaboration with other people. Anyone who's interested in trying to replicate this, we're happy to work with that. But we're really interested in other people's ideas on how to advance this kind of an approach in the future. So I'm keen to get going, and I'm interested in talking to other people who want to make a positive impact in Sub-Saharan Africa.
That's great. And one example is coming up next month, Clyde, where the International Agri-Food Network and the private sector mechanism within FAO is hosting a special briefing with FAO Director General Chu Dongyu. And I'm happy to report that the 4R Nutrient Solutions case study is going to be one of the topics that is going to be presented and discussed. So you'll have an opportunity to share directly with the top person at FAO how this program is delivering results. And again, it's multidimensional, it's multi-stakeholder, and it's not just focused on one SDG. We're focusing on multiple SDGs. So that's about what is the heart of GACSA and climate smart agriculture, that there is an opportunity for farmers to be valued, recognized, compensated for all of the goods and services that they deliver. It's not just about producing food. It's about environmental improvements. It's about climate change solutions. It's certainly about better livelihoods. And working together with all of our partners, we're learning and experimenting and doing a better job. It's a continuous improvement approach that I think is at the heart of GACSA. And while some that we interface with at the global level communicate the flawed message that agriculture is broken, we should be eliminating inputs and somehow going back in time, programs like this demonstrate the real value of science and technology and innovation and careful management and what we can do to deliver multiple outcomes. So we're go ahead, Clyde.
I just wanted to say that I think when we hold these webinars and we discuss some of these issues, we do tend to focus on the challenges that exist in Sub-Saharan Africa. But at the same time, I have a great deal of optimism about the potential of Africa. We did projects with 4-H in Ghana where we had 50 different groups of 4-H clubs in Ghana produced excellent work on what we called micro projects led by young people. And Africa is the youngest continent on the planet, and the potential of young people in Africa to really innovate and lead agriculture is, I think, amazing. I'd also like to recognize our member private sector partners in this. These are private companies, and I think all of them share a optimism about Africa and its potential to produce more food and drive positive results for the people here. So I think we focus on the challenges because the challenges need to be addressed, but I think we can't forget about the positive potential.
Absolutely. So as we wind down here and close out, I would be remiss if I did not single out and thank Jana Stakova. Jana at FAO is the behind the scenes master that put all this together. So Jana, thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
your
you very
great,
much, Ernie. Thank
your
you.
great staff support is what makes GACSA thrive. And again, I would urge all of you, if you're not a GACSA member, if you're just interested in learning more, follow up with us because GACSA is a place where we work together. No one has all the answers. And what's really unique and special about GACSA is the farmer center of it. When GACSA was created back 5 or 6 years ago, there was an era where there were lots of people talking about agriculture, governments, NGOs, businesses. And when we would go to meetings and look around the room, it was obvious that the most important people were not in the room, farmers. So we created GACSA to be a multi-stakeholder platform that put farmers at the center of discussions and decision-making. So for the farmers that are on this webinar today or will be listening afterwards, thank you for your leadership, for your input, for your contributions, because they are what we need to pay most attention to. You are the ones that are incurring the risk, are dealing with day-to-day variables that sometimes are unimaginable, and they create very, very significant challenges. So we have a lot of work to do, but with farmers at the center, creating the bow wave that will enable all of us to support and help farmers, we're confident that we're going to meet the goal of delivering multiple solutions to these very, very audacious sustainable development goals. So with that, to our panel members, I'm going to extend my thanks and turn it over to Allison. Allison, anything from your side as co-chair to help close us out?
Thank you so much. That was excellent. I learned a lot. I look forward to collaborating with all of you again. Jana posted in the chat many different ways to contact her and to contact GACSA. So please do be in touch, especially with Ernie and I and Jana about next steps. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.